Hi, I'm Dan Berkowitz for PremierGuitar.com, and I'm here to show you the Carvin BX500 amp and the Carvin BR410 cab. If you take a look at the cab and the amp, you'll see that the poor little amp is kind of outsized by the cab. It weighs less than 6 pounds, and I guess you could call it a two-finger carry, about so, less than 6 pounds. I call it the tone chameleon. And I call it the tone chameleon because there's so many ways that you can tweak your sound all in one little amp. That's something that makes it different than a lot of the other amps that are out there that are also in the micro amp category. You have 3 ways to get to this. You can use more or less conventional controls with the bass and the treble knobs. You can use the parametrics, which are the low and high mids with adjustable centers, no less. You can use a 9-band graphic EQ, and that switches in and out either through a toggle on the front or through a foot switch you can put in on the back. You can also use the contour knob, which scoops out some of the mids as you turn it up. So it has a lot of ways to get at adjusting your EQ. The amp has some other features that allow you to get even more sounds out of it. For one, it has a drive control that not only increases the volume level, but also increases kind of the harmonics that the amp generates. And it has a compressor on the front that's only one knob, which is really handy for adjusting those peaks. So if you play slap bass or you play just with a heavy attack in general, it'll kind of help keep things under control. Besides having 2 jacks that are combo jacks with either speak-ons or 1/4 inch, it also has a DI out on the back. It has a tube in and out. There's actually a tube in this thing, a 12AX7, that will kind of change the feel and the response. Not a great deal of difference in sound, but just by pushing it in, it engages the tube, and by pulling it out, it takes the tube out of the circuit. So that's another little feature that will change some of the sound for it. You'll also see on the back, there's a very unusual button right over on this side. Most bass amps will run at 4 or 8 ohms. This one's a little different because you can also run it at 2 ohms. If you push the button in, it'll change kind of the way it runs the voltage to the power amp, and it'll be able to handle that kind of power, or that kind of low impedance rating of 2 ohms, which could be like, this is a 4 ohm cab that we're looking at. You could take 2 of these 4 ohm cabs and be able to do just fine without overheating the amp. Most other amps, they'd go into protect mode as soon as you did that kind of thing. I'm going to let you hear some of the tones that you can get out of this. I brought my trusty old, this is a 1981 G&L, what's called the Hog 1K by Bass Guys. It's a mahogany body. It's the first instrument that Leo Fender designed with G&L when he started that company. And they're kind of an amazing instrument with very high output. In any case, I'm going to start off with a flat sound where the graphic is turned off, all the EQs are off, and the contour is off, and even the drive's off. And then I'm going to switch over to hearing, bringing in some of the other kinds of sounds. I'm going to engage the tube, setting on the back button, and I'm going to bring in some drive, and I'm also going to dial in a little bit more bottom and a little bit of the mid, the low mid. This will create a much fatter sound real quickly, just a couple of twiddles of the knobs. I'm going to take the EQs back to flat and bring up the contour halfway instead. Actually, I'm going to hit a note and then bring up the contour where it scoops out the mids a bit. Okay, and then just one more where if instead I want a brighter sound, that's a pretty easy sound to dial in too. Just go for the upper mids. They have some pretty convenient centers, and bring up a little of the trebles. And then the other way you can affect the same tone chameleon is by bringing up the graphic EQ. In this case, I've added some low mid bump to it to kind of fatten it, and then I'll add a little bit of the very high end for a little bit of bite. So it's kind of getting a couple things, kind of like a scoop. review in the September issue of Premier Guitar or premierguitar.com. I'm Dan Berkowitz, demonstrating today the Carvin BX500 amp and their BR410 cab.